Hello, everybody. I will introduce myself. I am Emma Farrow, Senior Manager of Business Development at Kongregate. Been at the company for about 5 years. My role primarily consists of working with amazing developers, guiding them through our evaluation process, and helping them get acquainted with our publishing program. So thank you. Big thanks to everybody for coming out to the early session today. I know it's never an easy ask, so very much appreciate it. So today, I will be talking about the benefits and costs of going cross-platform. And this talk has been heavily inspired by our VP of Insights and Analytics, Tammy Levy, who gave a similar talk at MIGS last year. And she is very insightful, so I hope you can take that from me as well. To give a little bit of context on why we're talking about cross-platform and why that's important to us, I think it's important to look at the context of who our company is. So we have three main pillars to the company. The first one, and where we were founded as a company, is platform. So we started the company 13 years ago with Kongregate.com, which is an open web platform really founded with the idea of nurturing developers and their communities and creating an open, kind of transparent space for them to come bring their games. More recently, we have also launched our next platform, which is Kartridge, and it's a PC platform that went into open beta in November. And so what we're trying to do is take the important aspects that we learned across Kongregate.com, the community building, the necessity of chat, the necessity of kind of a metagame and incentives around the platform, and kind of bring that over to this new platform. So we're hosting free-to-play premium games, every revenue model you can imagine. And so what was born out of Kongregate.com was actually our third-party publishing program. And so early days, about 6 years ago, when we first went into this vector of the industry, what we were doing is taking the top games on Kongregate.com and helping bring them to a mobile audience. So that's adjusting the games to fit that space and that kind of broader audience. We've now published somewhere along the way 60 games. Started as mobile free-to-play only, but as we were answering the question of how can we best support the developers that we're working with, we expanded outside of just free-to-play and expanded outside of just mobile. And then the third piece of the business is first-party game development studios. So we have acquired now several studios. What we do is work with the developer for a long time, become very close, essentially do due diligence through working with them, and then bring them into the Kongregate family so we can work even closer. And one great example that kind of hits all three of these pillars is Synapse. It is a Chicago-based studio, and they started on working with us on Kongregate.com 10 years ago with their game Tyrant Unleashed. We went to third-party publishing with them across 5 different games, actually, before we even moved into acquiring them. And just a few stats, 200 million plus mobile installs since 2013, 16 million monthly active users across our network, 60 plus games published, and over 120 games on Kongregate.com. So just some context on a few of the games we've published, give an idea of what we go after. So Adventure Capitalist is a game from Hyper Hippo based up in Canada. One of our early games in the publishing portfolio and also came from Kongregate.com, which, as you'll see a little bit later on, has a very different look than it does now in this iteration. It's one of our top grossing games, and again, we helped transform it for the mobile market. Another long-term franchise on Kongregate.com is Burrito Bison. They launched, I think, 3 different Burrito Bison games, and then we worked with them to bring kind of the most recent Burrito Bison game to mobile, and we're actually working with them on a soon-to-be-announced next game with a pretty cool licensed IP. And then on the premium side, we have one game, Speed Brawl, from Double Stallion Studios. And this was our first game that we did a simultaneous launch across PC and console. And so we got a lot of learnings that we'll be showing later in this presentation. And then one upcoming game, which is Flotsam, building garbage survival town. Think Waterworld in a game. And that's upcoming later this year. Launch plans yet to be announced. After laying the context of why we're talking cross-platform, why we feel like we have the right to talk cross-platform, here's the big why. Isn't it a nightmare to go cross-platform? Which, yes, it can be, but it's still important to evaluate the opportunity because it increases potential audience, pleases the current user base, and can just overall grow lifetime revenue. All important key things that we're looking for when launching a game. So, what are the things that make going cross-platform appealing? Distribution is really hard. Marketing's expensive. UA costs are continuing to rise year over year, month over month in some cases. Viral hits are rare. While we all wish we had the next Fortnite success, it does not come every day. And platform features are hard to get. There are a limited amount of editorial spaces available for games. So without putting in a lot of effort, a lot of money, it's difficult to get in front of people. I think everyone knows that mobile is a competitive platform. I've had many developers talk to me about how they've actually changed their strategy entirely away from mobile games because it's too competitive, it's too red water. But so if you look at it from 2008 to 2018, in 10 years, the number of games on the App Store 20x'd. And actually, there are 50 new games being uploaded every single day to the App Store. And then this is only, again, the iOS App Store. Android is an even bigger market. Looking at Steam, it is a similar trajectory, but on a slightly smaller scale. We're still seeing 25 new games launched every day. Discoverability is a really hard thing to achieve on these platforms. And even the newer platforms that you feel like you might have a good opportunity to be kind of one of the first arrivals, get some additional exposure, there's somewhat of a gold rush in getting to them. So looking at, for example, Switch, there are already over 1,000 games on there. So the race to get there is quick, but it quickly fills up as well. So that's also not meant to discourage, though. I think that it's important to look at the future and how we can set strategies to kind of differentiate yourselves in the market and also provide yourself the best chance of success. I think an interesting thing to look at right now is the PC platform space and kind of all the competition that's going on within it right now. So it's a market that's been dominated by one player, really, for over a decade. But as of recent, there have been a lot of additional stores entering this space, and I think that what developers can take away from this is that we shouldn't be seeing that one platform, Steam, as the default of, well, I'm launching a PC game, so first I go to Steam, then I potentially evaluate others. I think that it's important at this point to be evaluating which platform is the right one for your specific needs and your specific goals. And I think that overall, not building tech, not building kind of set plans around one platform and being more agile around it is a better plan for any developer. And I think that PC for a long time was an oddity in the market where there was really only one dominant force. If you look at mobile, there's iOS and Android having a ton of regional stores outside of just Google Play. If you look at console, there are 3 main players. And when you think about console, if you think about the lineup of Nintendo games versus the lineup of Microsoft games, you already create a brand in your mind of what games and what that audience might expect. And so that's, I think, something that we should be aiming for with PC as well, where we're not looking at one main platform. We're looking at how do you bring your game to the right platform to tell the right story and find the right audience. So I think when we're looking at this, we see cross-platform as creating multiple paths to success. So this is something that we've experienced. We have launched games on our own platforms, of course, launched games across other web PC platforms, all of the mobile ones that you can imagine, and all of the 3 major consoles as well. And I think that we've gotten a lot of learnings. We've had a lot of missteps as well, which I think we're going to try and share with you in this presentation so that you can potentially avoid some of the pitfalls that we have experienced ourselves. So what have we learned? And this is, I think, one of the cruxes of why it's important to talk about cross-platform and why it's important to evaluate. multi-platform players are really valuable. So looking at, for example, our game Bit Heroes, which is by Studio GPMN's, really great bit style art, cute, approachable MMORPG. They started on Kongregate.com, and then we helped take them to mobile. So what we actually found when we took the game to mobile is that without changing anything on the web version of the game, the performance in terms of volume grew drastically. And so this is true cross-platform play. On web, players were using it to go deeper on the strategy. Mobile, they were using it for check-ins, for quick matches. But it's not just about audience, of course, that we're looking for, looking at the revenue as well. So on mobile, the average revenue per paying user, and this is for mobile-only players, is $57. On web, they tend to be more engaged users. It's $242 for the average revenue of the paying user. But when you look at the cross-platform players, these are by far the most valuable. And in part, it's because these are the most engaged users. These are the ones who are most excited by the game, the ones who are engaging with the later term features, with the social elements. And so for them, having the ability to go cross-platform and play the way that they want to play has been beneficial in increasing their spend. So 10.5x the revenue per user. But looking at it in kind of a different way, what we see actually is that only 3% of total spenders are cross-platform players. And that's because it's a smaller percentage of the overall user base. However, it makes up 32%, almost a third, of the overall revenue of the game. So these are users that, when given the opportunity to engage with the game in the way that they prefer, will drive spending up for these users. And this isn't, like we're doing additional kind of pushes on these players even. We haven't segmented out these users and sent them additional offers. This is truly just because they would like to continue spending and engaging with the game in this way. So I think it's important, though, that we take a minute to talk about the costs of going cross-platform. So I think Kongregate has fallen into the trap of underestimating how difficult it is on every platform to adapt to the learning curve of it. So there's both the learning curve of getting onto the platform and then also the ongoing cost associated with maintaining a new platform, along with just the opportunity cost of what else could you be doing to improve the game with the time and resources that you're putting into going cross-platform. So for example, as we look at some of what we've learned takes time, on the console side specifically, we've always underestimated getting dev kits, releasing by region. You need approvals in every single region when you're looking at some of the consoles. Certification times always take longer than you think. There's a lot of back and forth in it. Communicating to the platform, creating that relationship with them takes a long time. Scheduling PR and marketing beats. If you don't understand kind of the schedule of all of the other pieces, you're not going to be able to schedule the PR and the marketing on the right cadence. And what's important that we figured out is you don't know what you don't know until you do it. So there are two approaches to solving that. There's trial and error, or there's working with an established partner who does have those learnings in place, does understand the best way to go about it. This is a fun slide of the acronyms that we had to learn in going through the platforms. We had one person who was solely devoted to figuring out how each of the actual platform consoles worked, and we became fluent in a new language. So resources are needed all the way from vetting through implementation, engineering on the actual implementations, QA to make sure it's working, BD for creating those platform relationships, marketing to actually get the word out there that you're going to a new platform. And then there's the actual hard cost of porting the game, whether that be at your own studio or by kind of getting another developer to come in and do that porting for you. So what can you do to mitigate these risks? The first couple of tips that I'm going to give you are ways to, not squander the opportunity when you're going to a new platform. So if you've decided you're doing this, these are things that you should make sure that you're doing so that you have the best possible game to appeal to those platform users. So polish, UI, UX all matter a lot. So once you have the good base of the game, The look and the play for the specific platform matters a lot, and especially polish on mobile and Switch are incredibly important. So for an example, our game Realm Grinder started on Kongregate.com in 2015. Top 10 grossing game and great long-term retention. We were seeing 6% D180 retention, and this is hard retention, not rolling. So looking at this, you'd say, wow, players were really taken by this game. There must be something really cool there. But then you look at it, and you don't even know what to do. It's a mess. So what we were doing coming from Kongregate.com is saying, all right, there's a core here. There's something at the base. But what do we do to bring this to a new platform? So we took some time and redesigned the game for these new platforms. The core is the same. This is the exact same game, but what we changed is the UI, the UX, and the art style. And going from, it took a while though, and I will say, this is, if you look, 2017 it launched on iOS and Steam. So that was 2 years really of working on the game. But it came in with a great feature on iOS and great traction on Steam. Another piece to take into consideration is that per platform UX is really important. Different platforms have different interactions. So on mobile, you tap. On PC, you click. On mobile, it's important to have bigger buttons for tapping, no double clicking, taking into account hand locations when you're designing the UI UX. And then on PC, you want a less bouncy, tutorial. You don't want a finger drag animation, and no social media sharing buttons. And then for each platform that you go to, make sure you add something special to it. So for example, our game Grid. This was our first premium game, first game that we took to console. So this is by an Italian studio called Antab Studio, and it's a really cool retro racer shoot 'em up game. And so we started on PC and then brought the game to Xbox a little bit later. So for Xbox, what we did was we took it onto Xbox exclusive for several months, added Xbox One X Enhanced 4K, HDR support, and it came in with a really good rating, and 2, fantastic support from the platform. When we brought it over to the Switch, we added controls specific to the Switch. So Power Glove style options, control options, and Joy-Con HD rumble support. This is important because that allows us to pitch this to the platforms. The platforms are always going to ask, what are you doing to make this special? Why is it the best version for our platform? And then the last piece is one that's an early lesson from Kongregate. This is find platforms where you can iterate and test. So players want engaging games. It's really important to get early kind of feedback from these players. Adventure Capitalist, like I said, you were going to see the first iteration of this game. This is what it looked like when we first saw it on Kongregate.com. They uploaded it as a way to learn Unity, seriously, these developers. And now it's one of our top grossing games but what we saw on Kongregate.com is amazing retention, amazing stats. And so what we were able to do there is iterate on the web version, get it looking a little bit more polished, and then bring it over to mobile, where it looked more like this, more like the Adventure Capitalist we know and love. And what we saw is a translation of the same success. The D1 to D30 drop-off decreased a little bit, but that's pretty standard when you go from web to mobile. Not every platform is good for testing. You don't go into a global launch without having tested, and you don't automatically launch onto Steam without early access without having tested. So web platforms, PC betas and alphas, Google Play early access, and mobile test markets and Steam early access, all great platforms where players don't have that high expectation of a fully finished, fully polished game yet, and they can give really meaningful feedback early on. Okay, so how can you predict cross-platform success? The answer is you can't, not with 100% certainty, but there are signals that you can use to give an idea of whether a specific game might be beneficial both across other platforms. So one, user ratings. Is going to vary platform to platform what a user rating is, but chances are if a player is liking the experience on one platform, other players will like it on another platform. So on Kongregate.com, we're really looking at games that are 4.0 and above rating. On Google Play, it literally needs to be over 4.0 even to get any traction from the platform. And then Steam, there are a few things that go into it, into the servicing algorithms there, but looking at kind of the number and the sentiment are important. Long-term retention. This is the KPI that crosses over most when you're looking at cross-platform retention, because KPIs are going to vary when you move from one platform to another. Long-term retention, if not the specific number, the general directional sense of it will carry over platform to platform. But it's at the core of the game. It's really hard to get right, and it's even harder to change, because this is really, it gives a good signal of how engaging and how much fun your long-term kind of tail of the game is, the systems that go into the game. This is crucial to creating kind of this long-term great player experience. Long-term retention's, like I said, consistent. It translates across mobile, web, PC, back and forth. We've done games really in every single direction, going from web to mobile, mobile to PC, PC to mobile, mobile to web. In every single way, it is consistent. And it's important to the platform considerations. So for Google Play, you need a strong D30 to be considered for featuring. On Steam, you'll have better servicing with longer-term retention. And I'm going to dig into that with a little bit of math for you across 2 games here. So looking at these 2 games, they're very dissimilar. We have Animation Throwdown, a licensed IP collectible card game, and Realm Grinder, a more niche but very deep strategy idle game. So they were both previously on web and mobile, both went into Steam spring 2017. And the amazing thing about these 2 games is they have nearly identical Steam revenue. But Animation Throwdown is a much more mid-core game. So the ARPDAU is 10 times that of Realm Grinder. So how does this work? How did this happen? First, let's look at retention. So Animation Throwdown, fairly standard for collectible card game or mid-core game. Realm Grinder, more similar to an idle game as you would expect. At D180 though, the important thing to note is Realm Grinder has double the players of Animation Throwdown. They've doubled the retention at that point. So looking at retention, that equates to higher DAU. With more players, Realm Grinder, it doesn't matter if they have lower monetization, they can still maintain the same level of monetization that Animation Throwdown does. And along with higher DAU goes higher concurrence. So if you look at Realm Grinder at the beginning of, this is the first month that they launched. So at the beginning of the month, Realm Grinder had 2x the concurrent users. At the end of the month, they had 7x the users. So if you remember, their long-term retention is about 2x. So if it were only looking at retention, you would expect this to stay somewhat constant throughout the month. But what's not taken into account here is that Steam creates their algorithm partially, and their surfacing algorithm partially around concurrent users, and will give better visibility to these games that have the higher concurrent user base. So at the end of the first month, Realm Grinder had 80% more downloads than Animation Throwdown did. Again, that's after 1 month, and it's only continued growing since then. And then final note is much more of a subjective term, but I think what's key when you're looking at games and whether they'll work cross-platform is, do users love them? I've said this before, but if a game is performing well on one platform, the chance of it performing well on another platform are significantly increased. So when Animation Throwdown was first surfaced to the Kongregate office, you could just hear, and this is on web, so you could just hear clicking all day, every day. And it was a little infuriating, but at the same time, our CEO said, I knew that Venture Capitalist was something special when I looked around the office and realized that everyone was playing it. She didn't really have to look, you could hear it, but same idea stands. So that is all I have time for today. But thank you so much for listening, and please follow us on Kongregate Dev's Twitter. Our blog has a lot of amazing content. We post on pretty much every topic imaginable, and then you can reach out to me directly at emma@kongregate.com, and then I think I have time for some questions.
What platform or tech that you guys recommend for published titles? So a title a tech that can allow something to work on web and mobile without making 2 games.
Yeah, so web and mobile is difficult. I think especially for web, the technology has always been difficult. We are definitely the biggest proponents, though, of using Unity and WebGL to bring that to web. I would say at this point, looking for ways to bring the game to PC and mobile may be a more beneficial use of time. I don't know if my company would love me to say that, but being honest with you all.
Hi, so the question is, How normally does release on extra platform influence KPIs for the original platform? So I mean, theoretically, I think you would see some increase, but what was like the best, the best case is,
Yeah, so I think what is primarily impacted is volume as opposed to the actual core KPIs. So sometimes you will see better performing longer term retention because as you're adding in that additional user base, the community is reinvigorated, some of those community features are improved, and so that would be I think one kind of core metric that improves. But generally, when you're going cross-platform, it really is about bumping up the volume across all of them.
Probably my question was, how does it impact the original users on the original platform? Say you go from mobile to PC, how let's say a PC or a web release, impacts the KPIs for the original mobile
Got it.
audience?
Yeah. So I mean, I think the answer is the same, really, that they can only really benefit from it because we're not changing the gameplay experience for them. If the game isn't easily played cross-platform in a real way, where PC players or mobile players have an advantage, then we do make it a true cross-platform experience. But if there is some advantage, we're not going to add them into the same ecosystem because that wouldn't be beneficial for that original user base. So assuming it's the same experience, we'll add everyone into kind of the same group, and it's a better experience for them because of that greater user volume, really. But again, the only KPI that's affected, even on that first original platform, is potentially longer long-term retention, or better long-term retention.
So Emma, thank you so much.
All right, thanks
Very good
everyone.
stuff.